The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 57. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and today we are going to have a special episode, a series of trainings that we are talking about, which are going to be the 12 critical projects that you need to execute in your business in order to hit 100K a month in your service business using a high-ticket program. There's a lot of focus that we spend on the design up front, but we are going to be focusing on one of those projects today. So we're going to cut over to training on one of those projects. And after the training's done, come back, hang with us, and I will give you a way for you to get a copy of some of this training for yourself. And we'll turn it over to there. Hey everyone, Frank Bria here. And day 8, we're talking about the next project, Project 8. This one's a big one. There's a lot of stuff going on in this project. We're going to talk about talent management today. This one, there's a lot of content. So grab the training document in the comments here at the end of the training to make sure you can follow through. There's a lot of stuff here. The purpose of your talent management project is for you to be able to attract and retain amazing talent that helps your company achieve its goals. Okay. You know, it's kind of sad you don't invest in systems, you invest in people. I totally agree. Who's going to run the system anyway? So it's really important that you have a successful team in place. And to build that team, you need the processes in place for great talent management. Now, I call it talent management rather than just hiring because there's actually a life cycle of talent in your organization, and you need to consider all of them. You have to have systems for everything. So I'm going to walk you through those very basic systems that you need for talent management, but it doesn't represent everything about management. There's tons more you can learn, but it does give your growing company sort of a starting place. And as you get bigger, you're going to need more sophisticated processes and even potentially a human resources department. But for now, just focus on these 4 critical milestones in the life cycle of your team. First, hiring. Okay, you need to attract and choose the right people for your team. And that means you need to get the right people in the right roles at the right time. So to do that, you need to start off with role definition. And this is something that most entrepreneurs fail to do. The role you're trying to fill is more than just a job title. You're not just trying to find an assistant or find a chief marketer or whatever, or even a specific set of tasks, okay? You need to know a number of different things when defining the role. Start with number 1, the success metric. Okay, what needle is this person trying to move? Is it sales, efficiency, customer success? Start with what you're trying to accomplish with this role rather than just listing out the tasks that they're going to be doing. And if you have too many metrics, too many things that this role is trying to fix, you're probably trying to force too many roles into one job. Okay. 2, reporting structure. Who will this person report to? Who's going to assess their success and who's going to assign them tasks? Really important to know. 3, budget. How much can you afford in order to accomplish this success metric? Now, this is sometimes tricky, but you need to try to monetize the metric you're trying to move and get a great return on your investment. You know, for things like sales and revenue, it's really easy, but for things like process, you need to think a little bit more holistically about the time you're saving and the things that you can do with your newfound time. So you need to think that through, but your goal should be to achieve a 10 to 20x return on your investment, very similar to the ROI that your client should be expecting from you. 4, scope of work. What tasks will the role perform? How will those tasks directly impact your success metric? And how much time will they need to perform those tasks? Okay, that is usually where people sort of start, but that's the 4th thing. And 5th, finally, what skills are needed? What are the minimum required skills for the job to be successful in the role? Now, a lot of people say hire for personality, don't worry about skills, you can always teach skills. And while that's true, the question you need to ask yourself is, do I have the time to teach all of those skills? Okay, so be very careful when you go down that road. Now, this should all be written up into a job description. Include the mission and vision of your company so that some ideal a candidate will know exactly what they're signing up for. Okay, you want alignment there, basically. All right, now finding candidates. There's three kinds of candidates: ones who are currently working, ones who've just finished a project and are kind of waiting, searching for the next thing, and those who are actively seeking for work. Most entrepreneurs focus on category 3 and don't even think about categories 1 and 2. The thing is, all other things being equal, the first category is likely to have your best candidates. It's not definitely the case 100% of the time, but at least don't forget to look for those people who aren't currently considering a position. You know, go out and look at your competitors or your peers and who's working for them and see if that's someone you want to approach. So don't just publish the job post and expect the best candidates to come to you. Go do some digging and actively recruit. There's a reason that Fortune 500 companies have recruiters. They know their best candidates, and the best candidates are often found someplace else, not in the resume pile, okay? Interviewing candidates. Now, this is the most critical part of recruiting, and frankly, it's the one thing most people just wing. And that's a really bad idea because it will make or break the success of people performing in this role. There are 3 basic interview question types, and you should use all 3, but they're going to require some preparation for you. Number 1, skill questions. Okay, so after you develop the job description, make sure you have a clear set of questions that ask about the necessary skills for the job. Start with yes or no questions. Have you used ActiveCampaign before? Ask for a self-assessment of their skill level. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being expert, how skilled are you with ActiveCampaign? And follow up by asking for examples. Don't allow fuzzy answers here. Keep a checklist of skills for each interview and mark them off as you go through, because you're going to forget later if you don't write it down. 2, scenario questions. These are really important. Think about situations that might be problematic for the role. Maybe you want to make sure the person knows how to problem solve so they're just not bugging people and asking questions all the time. I mean, like the let me Google it for you kind of people, okay? Maybe you want to make sure the person knows how to get along with others. Maybe you want them to be able to lead a team. List the scenarios you think will be most likely for the role and potentially problematic for you, and ask about them. And the question should take the form of, tell me about a time when you, okay? Let the candidate talk about the situation. Don't have them answer in the theoretical. Follow up by asking very specific details. This is how you can tell the difference between a candidate who's making it up or who actually has been in that situation. Ask specifics, dig into details. So when this happened, what did you do? And when they reacted that way, what was your response? A candidate who is lying about the situation will begin to shift from certain answers to creating kind of caveats. What you're listening for is a shift from the I did it this way to I would do it this way. That's when you can tell the person is embellishing the story. 3, case-based questions, okay? Each role is likely going to have a core problem that needs to be solved. Maybe it's fixing a broken marketing campaign or ensuring meetings get scheduled on time. Whatever that is, come up with a specific case for your ideal team member that they're likely to encounter and have them solve it. Ask them not just how would you solve it, just solve it. Give them, if it's a broken marketing campaign, give them a couple of cost per leads or a couple of ads that are performing badly and ask them to fix them right there on the spot. Now, the idea here isn't to get the right answer. What you want to hear is how the candidate would go about solving the problem. What questions do they ask? What's their thought process? Tell the candidate you're interested more in process than the answer and have them think out loud. You're going to really learn a lot about your candidate from this process. Make sure you interview a few candidates. Don't just hire the first one without talking to other people, even if you think they're like the perfect person. Compare at least 3. That way you know the range of people that you're able to access, okay? Then it's time to make an offer. Know your budget, be honest about it. Compensation is a sensitive issue, so just ask and be direct about it. Start during the interview process. Ask the candidate what their salary expectations are. If they ask first what the budget for the position is, feel free to offer a range and say that it's based on skill set. That way you know that the person might show up in the middle or the bottom of that range based on how you interpret how the interview goes. But be honest about it. If you're not able to pay a certain amount, don't include that in your offered range. If the candidate is reluctant to share what their expectations are, press them for details. This is a question you absolutely have the right to have an answer to. You need to know going in that you're not wasting anyone's time. So say that. Just say, look, I need to know if I'm wasting your time here. Okay. Now, there's a number of ways to compensate a team member: hourly, fixed salary, percentage of revenue, or percentage of profit. I would recommend avoiding percentage of revenue or profit for any role that isn't directly responsible for those numbers. Salespeople are often compensated based on the revenue they generate. That's their commission. Senior partners in leadership teams may also be compensated for share of profit, but be careful here, because a lot of entrepreneurs have overextended themselves by using profit sharing as a way to entice candidates in that they shouldn't otherwise have been hiring. Basically, if you can't afford it, you're probably not ready for it. So again, go back to your budget and make sure it's an investment you're willing to make. Some negotiation may be necessary in an offer. Be clear about that and make it quick. Don't enter into long, drawn-out, protracted negotiations. They're typically a sign of bad things to come. All right, that's hiring. Let's talk about the next piece, which is training. All right, because each new team member has a role, there should be some kind of training process in place. That doesn't mean you have to have like a set of training videos for absolutely every task or how things are done, but you do have to have some kind of a training plan. Every set of tasks has a cycle associated with it. Maybe tasks are repeated daily, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. Most roles have weekly cycles. Things happen from Monday to Friday. Know what that cycle is, because you're going to be using it in your training plan. Basically, you want to execute different management techniques based on the number of cycles. So in your first cycle of tasks, like let's say it's the first week or the first day, if it's daily repeated tasks, take that first task cycle and work side by side with the new team member. Okay. You're going to have to give very specific direction and answer a lot of questions. Be very directive. Think of details you otherwise wouldn't think of, like, do you hate a particular font, or is there a particular time of day you expect something to arrive? Okay. The communication here should be one way. You explain, the other person executes under your supervision. Now, they may ask for some clarifying questions along the way, but fundamentally, this is you explaining. During the second cycle, you should observe. Be there in the moment to help troubleshoot. Let the person do it, but there will be issues. So set your expectations correctly. It's not going to happen perfectly the second time. You're going to have problems. So you still need to be directive, but be supportive as well. You're providing some kind of a safety net because you want to try to catch errors in real time because you know they're going to happen. But the communication here is two-way. Your team member shows you what they're doing, and you're communicating feedback in real time so that things get done correctly. All right. In the third through the fifth cycle of this, you're going to be available and expect questions, but allow for some autonomy here. The safety net's still in place, but honestly, you're probably going to catch the errors after they happen rather than during the actual process itself. So make sure you have a good QA process in place. The communication goes back to one way again. Your team member lets you know what they've done and when. You're going to make sure it's being done correctly. And of course, you can provide feedback, but fundamentally, they're letting you know. After the fifth cycle, you're not off duty. You've just changed how you engage. Okay, your team member will probably take up to about 90 days, usually, to get in the rhythm of a new assignment. So until you see their skill set move to expert level, you're going to need to be available for coaching and support. You're going to be less directive here and allow a lot more autonomy in problem solving for your team member. The safety net is sort of gone in the sense that your expectation is that things are going to be executed correctly, but you'll have at least generated the appropriate QA checkpoints and make sure you execute on them. All right, let's talk about the next step in the life cycle of talent management, and that is retaining. So you're going to want to make sure you keep your good people around and you don't have turnover. It's expensive and annoying. And the best way to retain a team member is to make sure they're happy, challenged, and aligned with their long-term goals. You do that proactively and occasionally reactively, although hopefully not too often. All right, start off with performance and career check-ins. Every 90 days, have some kind of performance and career check-in with your team member. Here's a typical agenda. Number 1, review any questions or concerns they have about the role and the company as a whole. Number 2, provide feedback, both positive and corrective, on performance. Have some kind of clear understanding of what the success metrics are for the role and make sure you have measurement on them. Don't just say, we kind of feel like this is the ball's getting dropped. Be very clear. Like, of the last 5 times this was supposed to be done, 3 times it didn't get done on time. Be very specific. 3, assess personal and professional goals. Ask about where the team member wants to be, what skills they want to acquire, and what kind of impact they want to be making in the organization as a whole. And make sure that you discuss your vision for that particular team member's career path. Don't just assume that the person is punching a clock for you. Think about their career development and you'll retain really, really good people. 4, resolve any concerns on performance or career path alignment. There might be some problems. You might need to discuss them, come up with a plan to fix them, or the expectations for your team member might be out of alignment with what you can do. All right, how do you handle team member problems? Sometimes you have to address performance issues or team member complaints in the moment rather than during a check-in. If you approach the team member with an issue, start the conversation by explaining the facts of the situation and which metric or company value is affected. Don't get into your feelings and emotions about it or having drawn conclusions about it. The process from here on should be the same whether you have a complaint or your team member has a complaint. All right, number 1, listen carefully. Don't interrupt. Let the person have their say. Don't formulate a response while listening. If the feedback is really hard to hear and you find yourself really getting emotional about it, take some paper and pencil or pen and just start writing down what they're saying. That's going to help slow your thinking down, and it actually demonstrates active listening. If you find yourself disagreeing with what's being said, stop yourself and think from the team member's perspective. What's behind what's really going on here? Okay. Number 2, acknowledge. Use the phrase, I want to acknowledge what you're saying, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. Doesn't mean you agree. Okay. Give acknowledgement as a gift to your team member. It doesn't have to come with caveats. Don't say, I want to acknowledge what you're saying, but just say you acknowledge. It doesn't mean you agree, but use reflective listening here so that you can find out exactly what's happening. Keep asking questions until you understand exactly what your team member is saying. 3, fact find. You may need to pause the conversation here to go check what your team member is saying, or go do your own digging. Try to discover the root cause of the problem and what's really going on. Check statements that are made by your team member for veracity if necessary, and make sure you understand the exact situation you're dealing with. Try to understand the context of the issue, not just from the team member's perspective, but the entire organization. And then finally, 4, act. Decide on what action you'll take based on the information that you have. Share that information with your team member. Explain what decision you've made and why you've made it. Unless you've misunderstood the situation or you've asked for feedback, this decision is not negotiable. So make sure that you are very clear about that and that you explained it in ways that your team member understands. Handling team member problems can be really frustrating, but having a set process that you follow is really going to help you because it's going to slow down your emotional reactions and keep you focused on executing tasks. And that's going to be much more successful in the long run. All right. What happens when a valued team member wants to leave? Sometimes you get surprised by a team member who's really a value to the team wants to leave. And when they're an asset and you want to keep them, this could be something that you're frustrated with, but engage in an open discussion about it. Don't just be reactive. Number one, find out what's motivating the team member to leave. It might be limited opportunity or compensation or the company culture, whatever it is, make sure you listen very carefully because it might be hidden in the surface explanation. So ask clarifying questions without judgment in order to dig in and find out what's going on. Number two, determine whether you can even address the issue. Okay, if you can't fix the problem with the team that the team member has raised, or you don't think it's valid, then wish the team member best of luck and assist in orderly separation. Three, ask the team member if they're open to addressing the issue. Like if we could fix that for you, would you be open to stay? Now, it may be too late. It often is by the time you get notice. But if there's a chance to fix the issue and the team member wants to, then begin to discuss it. Four, jointly determine a plan to keep the team member. Now, let this be a plan you both craft together, because if you're simply throwing out a counteroffer, it's likely going to be unsuccessful, even if in the short term, your team member decides to accept it. Statistics show that almost 80% of employees who accept the counteroffer to stay end up leaving within the next 12 months anyway. So make sure that your team member is invested into the long-term solution to address the issue they've raised. All right, step 4, separating. This is a tough one. Sometimes you have to separate from an employee. There's 2 kinds of separation I want to talk about: voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary separation is when you let an employee go, and involuntary is when an employee quits. So let's address the different cases. First of all, voluntary separation for cause. If you have an issue with a team member, either their performance or they've violated company culture or a value, and you need to dismiss them, you need to be very careful, but act swiftly. Document all of the processes that this team member is accountable for and have a transition plan. Ideally, do this in advance of your conversation, if possible. Sometimes it's not. But document all of the security and login issues that you're going to have terminated for this team member. That would be something that would be good to have on all team members at all times. Hold a conversation at a time when another team member is able to disable logins and access so that it's happening simultaneously. Make the separation effective immediately. Don't let people finish the day or hang around. If you're terminating someone for cause, there is literally no good reason to have them stick around. Transition all the processes to other team members or to yourself if necessary. All right, let's talk about voluntary separation, not for cause. So occasionally you have to make a change in roles due to business issues. This is most often the case when you can't afford an employee anymore, or their compensation's too high due to no fault of the team member. Be honest, be open, and be, for all things, compassionate when discussing with team members. Sometimes you can arrange things to adjust compensation appropriately, but if separation needs to happen, don't beat around the bush. Explain clearly what's going on and why. There's specific pieces of information that you need to know immediately when this conversation happens. Number 1, when will the separation be effective? Number 2, when will final compensation be paid? And be careful, because there are local laws and regulations that often come into play here. Number 3, what will the transition plan be? And number 4, and often forgotten, what will the messaging be internally and externally? Because your team member, when they leave, wants to make sure it doesn't feel like they were fired. So you're going to have to create messaging both internally in your organization and to any clients or vendors that they might be dealing with. Now, often entrepreneurs who panic will lay off employees without really thinking through the answers to these questions. That's just not fair. So if you don't know how this transition process is actually going to work, hold off until you have answers to these questions. Think also about severance and transition times. They don't have to match. If you decide to pay a severance, it's often much more productive to pay it and release the team member immediately. Team members who know they're leaving can sometimes cause issues or be unproductive even when they were really, really good team members beforehand. So think through those unseen costs when deciding on separation times and paying a severance and having people do transition work. Keep that team down to a core group of people that have to be there. All right, let's talk about involuntary separation. Now, this is when a team member gives notice and they're going to quit. So assuming that the team member's notice doesn't cause other havoc in your team, because it might, and you might just have to say, look, I know you've given 2 weeks notice, but this is so insane what's going on. We're just going to have to separate immediately. That's rare. Try not to do that if at all possible. Try to prepare for some kind of orderly transition. Here's the transition plan you need to think through. Number one, find out what tasks are in scope for that team member. Get it documented, make sure you know. Number two, who is going to be performing these tasks upon separation? It might be multiple people. Number three, what security and logins are going to need to be disabled upon separation? Number four, who's going to disable those logins and when is that going to happen? Number five, is the role description up to date? If not, can the team member make any adjustments in that role description before they separate? And number six, will any training be necessary from the team member in order to transition tasks? And if so, when's that going to occur? In every case of involuntary separation, hold an exit interview. This is a great opportunity to find out what's working and what's not working in your organization that led the person to separate. Sometimes there's really nothing that's going wrong, but you should be asking one way or another. All right, that was a lot, I know. Talent management is big. Building a team that's going to be successful in your organization is something that takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus, but it is the end all be all of having a really solid organization. You need a team to be successful in meeting your goals. So this is one of those ways of creating that. All right, everyone. That was it. Hope that was helpful. It was a lot of stuff. The training notes are going to be here in the comments, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 9. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, everyone, that's it for today. And 2 things that you want to do. Number one, if you have not had a chance to join our Facebook group, you need to be able to do that. This is really where we're going to be discussing a lot of this stuff in detail. You can actually, in the Facebook group, get written documentation of the project that we just discussed. So where you want to go to is facebook.com/groups/high ticket program. All together in one word, no breaks, no dashes, high ticket program. So facebook.com/groups/high ticket program. That link is below the video or in the show notes page. If you're out and about listening audio, come on back to click on through and join. Absolutely free. Other thing that we want to offer you is called our 12-week high ticket program Black Book. This is over 60 pages of standard operating procedures for designing, launching, executing your high ticket program. The way you get that is you go to frankbria.com/blackbook. Again, the link is below here for you to grab that. High ticket program is our Facebook group. The Black Book is our free 60-page standard operating manual for how to run a group program. Go get that at frankbria.com/blackbook, and we will see you there. Thanks again so much for being with us today. We're going to have great content again coming up soon, so stick with us for our next episode, and we'll see you soon. All right, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.